Ma'am, many questions we have received. Some are there which are suggestion in the form of suggestions that we will send from the. I will request Samir ji, Economic Cell, to finally forward those suggestions for you to consider in your future decisions. One thing is, we have seen a big pandemic on this COVID side. People are concerned or want to look after what are the supportive policies, etc., particularly for the MSME sector. Though a lot of loans, etc., and supportive schemes have come up, some of the MSME sectors are facing some challenges. On that front, what we think is the future that the government can do, their concerns are there on this.
I think it's very dependent on keeping in touch continuously. MSME sector is across the board. When you say MSME, they can be in manufacturing, they can be in servicing, in manufacturing, they can be doing so many different engineering, non-engineering. So it is just not one group, it's a spectral group. It ranges widely. And even during the pandemic, the solutions or the hand-holding that we've done with the MSMEs has been because of the continuous engagement even during the pandemic. And it is only because of that engagement and sharing of thoughts, the schemes with which we came up could become of some use to them. And as a result, we find the MSMEs have kept their nose above water, even at a very difficult situation. So, what is it that one thing that I can do after, during this phase of revival for MSME? There is no one answer. It has to be through continuous engagement with the government, and for each, within the larger umbrella of MSME, each area's problem will have to be addressed.
Thank you, ma'am. People are saying that though inflation today has come down and India has seen in comparison to other countries lower inflation, but still some of the people have concerns, and there is a question by 2-3 gentlemen, is how we are going to reconcile growth and inflation. So you have said that stagflation is not a concern or any chance of India getting into a situation of stagflation. But inflation globally is an important concern where many countries are facing the inflation. India is on a growth path. How do we reconcile the growth path from inflation and growth together?
I have a particular difficulty if the question is posed like this. How are we going to reconcile? No. I have to manage inflation, but I have to encourage growth. There's no way in which I'll go on reconciling. It's not reconciling. Well, all right, if you're really a stickler to that word reconciling, yes, it is reconciliation. But the approach that we are taking is growth is absolutely got to be given its full share of attention. It has to be really given all the necessary push. And for that, government will have to be clear on where the necessary push will have to be given. India's inflation, now in the parliament I've answered, it is not to say that there is no burden of increased costs on manufacturers or increased price on consumers. I repeat that India, legislatively and also because of the way in which we handle our inflationary things, has given itself number 4. 4% inflation is accepted. And a tolerance band of -2 or +2. Don't allow it to go further below than 2%. And ideally, don't ever allow it to go above 6%. But you found that in the last few, particularly in the last few months, it went 7 and even over 7. Nothing compared, of course, to the fragile 5 days where it crossed 10. Food was even below, above 13% and so on. And that was the consistent position for almost 22 full months. If you were to take a 28-month phase, 22 months we were in double-digit inflation. So, nothing to compare with that. And mind you, nothing to compare with that in spite of a global pandemic, all countries being affected, global commodity prices shooting up the sky, crude oil prices going up. There was a time when crude oil price was very low. And of course, we happily also benefited from it and used that money for developmental expenditure. So, the global impact of inflation, the inflation which you import in a way, because of the high cost of crude, because of high cost of fertilizer, high cost of commodities, and of course high cost of gold. The insatiable thirst that we have in India for gold, and I think about 1 or 2% is what is available in India, the rest is totally imported. And money is paid in foreign exchange for that. So, fuel, fertilizer, gold are all imported for us, the inflation, because they cost go up, you pay for it in foreign exchange, you bear the burden of it. But there is also an element of cyclically an inflation which happens in India because of the crop cycles, the perishable commodities, onions or potatoes or garlic or tomatoes. In some parts of the country there's excess crop and farmers don't get good price and they can't sit with the perishable tomatoes at home. So they get in frustration, they throw it out. There's a lot of clamor about why farmers will have to suffer. And absolutely rightly, why should farmers suffer? But the moment the price of tomatoes go up, the consumer's argument comes in, what is this? How can middle class buy tomatoes at this price? Both are matters of concern for the government. It can't be that price of consumers should go up, but the benefit doesn't reach the farmer. It can't be that the farmers are desperate to throw it in the field and say it's a waste and sell that at 2 rupees, much far lesser than his input cost to the end consumer. So such paradoxes which exist will also have to be handled. So the crop cycle related, supply related, particularly of essential commodities. India again imports huge quantities of edible oil. Alright, I'm very grateful that the Prime Minister gave a lot of attention to it. Even in 2016, we had a Tilhan, Dalhan push, oil seeds and pulses push, gave farmers a lot of bonus so that the output will increase. But we also depend on an oil which we don't produce at all in this country, palm oil. Every bit of it has to come from somewhere. And there are 2 top countries which sell less. And therefore, the market also decides on what price India should be given this. We import huge volumes of it. So, fuel, fertilizer, gold, edible oil, and sometimes pulses also. So, these are inflation which are from outside. Crop cycle related inflation is very much in India. Every season, sometimes tomato, sometimes onion, sometimes potato, but we have to have a better management of these. And that's what we have tried doing. And I agree, when it crossed 7, it worries all of us. But I'm glad to know yesterday the figures have come. 6.7 is what is now. From 7 it's come down. And I feel this downward trend will continue.
Thank you, ma'am. People are very much excited the way we at this post-pandemic, due to the rising price of crude oils, we went for import from Russia and still even went ahead of the global pressures. Here many people have asked about their excitement about the rupee trade that we are opening up with several countries more and more. So it will help a lot of exporters, manufacturers, etc. So your thought and vision on the rupee trade that India is opening up for our new opportunities for our global trades.
Yes, after quite a lot of working together with the RBI, we have come up with this, and I think this will benefit our exporters. Equally, it will also benefit our importers, because you roughly know at what level you are talking about, and when you're dealing with it in Indian rupees, your mind itself has a certain level of comfort, and we think many of the countries will be better off in dealing with rupee rather than dealing with a hard currency like dollar. So this is something which has just come out. Lots of work is yet to be completed. Every country will have to be now given the information about it, be made aware, so that then they see the advantage of the trading in rupee, and then they can have businesses linked with one another with the rupee as exchange. So there is, at least now we've crossed the first major milestone. It is now to be made popular among countries which deal with us. I think it will be a very good step forward for a long-term good trade based on Indian rupee.
Thank you, ma'am. Here, many people are involved in the startup and the fintech industries. There are many people who have several innovations on these issues. So there are questions with regard to the overall ecosystem picture that on the global financial settlement system, some issues on that. Then about blockchain technology and even digital central bank currencies on the digital settlement, so that they have certain good initiatives on fintech technologies. What is the vision, or what is the roadmap, or what you think on these issues? Blockchain technologies, global settlement systems, and this digital currencies.
Quite a lot of things put into one.
We are very much interested on this.
Because each one needs a bit of explaining, each one has so much to be said about. I can always give a flat, bland answer saying, yes, digital currency, RBI is taking care of it, they'll come up with it whenever I've announced it in the budget. Okay, I've addressed one. That's not what you want. Greater engagement on specifics of each one of them will be good for me to hear from you, good for me to also say what little I can say about it. Never mind, the blockchain technology. Government of India is very clear that we need the blockchain distributed ledger technology to be encouraged. I do not want anyone here belonging to the startup world to think, is the government so inward looking, they don't want technology? No. We've said this so many times. The benefits of a distributed ledger technology go beyond cryptocurrency, that is. And everything that floats around is not currency. You can have assets created. And of course, some framework will be given. But they are not currencies. So this debate, I think, because of the energy, enthusiasm, eagerness, curiosity, keeps repeating itself. There's so much happening in it. Everything that which probably we had mentioned in our own way earlier is now getting all opened up. The one episode from where you had too many press coverage in the last few weeks, into which investigation is happening, reveals the several pitfalls. So I think Bangalore is the place which has to think about it in all its dimensions. A curiosity question, or a repetitive question, or what's the government going to do? Government has already done something. Government has already warned earlier, saying please, caution is the word. So I think all of us will have to share our thoughts and move with a bit of caution on this. There's immense possibility when you're talking about the technology. But how and where and what trajectory it takes is something which all of us will have to be concerned about and watchful.
And on the financial settlement, international financial settlement, do you want to? There was a question on the
I've already spoken about it in the GIFT City initiative time. There's a lot of prospects for global financial settlement. We have already had this exchange with Singapore. India's UPI is now acceptable in UAE. It's also taken up in Singapore. There are lots more countries which are keen about it. There is some work also going on cross-border payments. So this is a developing area about which I cannot probably say one or two lines. And in fact, I'll be doing injustice if I say just 2 or 3 lines on it.
So here many people have in this area, working in this area on the startup and other ecosystem. Currently, ma'am, there is a concern about this freebies and the state debt to state GDP ratio. Various people are talking about how do you classify freebies, what should be the roadmap for fiscal consolidation, states, what are the guidance on this. So the people just want to have your thoughts on the freebies, debt to state GDP ratio and other fiscal consolidations.
I think it is good augury that the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned about freebies and their impact on economy. And there's now a lot of interest on the topic and discussions are commencing, but a genuine good debate and building on arguments is so required. Because any attempt to divert from the core principle which we need to understand, or any attempt to undermine or dilute this debate, is a disservice to this country. Because we all know governments have responsibilities. Governments have responsibilities, as I said in my opening remarks, to ensure that good education reaches all its citizens. To ensure, particularly, the poorer sections of societies don't get deprived of quality education. Governments have a responsibility, similarly, that the healthcare, basic healthcare is taken care of, and also where the poor are involved, some higher end, expert involving kind of medical assistance. When required, the poor should be able to access it. And that is why you'll find that from independence till today, every government would say, committees were appointed, Kothari Commission was appointed, very many other committees were appointed to say, why can't we spend up to 6% of the GDP on health, on education, and so on. So, no government till today has said, no, I have no responsibility towards education, let private education happen. Nobody has said it. We've allowed private sector to participate in taking on the education responsibilities, but the governments have never, and I say governments because no government between 47 and today has ever said education we don't need to spend. On the contrary, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, tribal welfare schools, residential schools, both center and states have all participated and come up with more and more ways of reaching out deeper into areas which have not had good quality education. So, if any attempt is being made to say education is being now treated as freebie, I'm sorry. That's an irresponsible, misguided statement. So is health. So a welfare respecting government, which is what every government of India has been, some successful, some partly successful, some better in success, in reaching out, has never shied away from their responsibility on education or health. But I will then naturally in your mind or in any media's mind would be the question of, so what constitutes freebie according to you? The debate should determine it. I'm not going to give a list of this is not freebie, that's freebie. I'm not doing that. But I will also leave a thought with you. You may promise something. Let's say when I say you, a state government or a central government, you promise something, say I will give you something for free. It could be electricity, it could be anything else. And I'm not saying you should not, you want to do it. But make sure you understand the financial level of your state, the fiscal strength of your state. And having promised it, during the election you won, you come back, ensure that you fulfill it because you've given a word. And how? By making sure that your budget will have a provision for it. That provision will ensure that you identified a section for whom you want to give free electricity, be they farmers, be they somebody else. You promise them up to 300 units or whatever, 300 units of free electricity. For that, you know the number of people who should get it, you in your budget. Make a provision for that. And assume here is a NTPC or some public sector undertaking which is generating power. I broadly categorize them as GenCos, generating companies. Here is another which is the distributing company. Without both of them, you're not going to get power produced, you're not going to have power distributed. So for that free power that you're giving, pay the GenCo because he has to get the power produced and give the bijli. Give the discom because he has to distribute it. Then what you're saying as, I have every right to give a freebie, you have a right to give a freebie, you paid for those who are producing it. Equally, do you have enough fiscal strength? Are you generating enough revenue that you can do all this and take care of your committed liabilities like salary, pension, and your usual thing of give water, give road, make sure your state has schools, colleges, education, hospitals. So I hope you get the perspective of what freebies can be. If you give the free power and you don't make a provision in your budget, this generating company strictly can be in a position to say, I won't supply you. Distributor can say, no, I won't take any more of distributing for your state. But the moment they do stop, who's the one who's going to get affected? The people themselves. And is this going to help anybody? The burden of what is not paid by whoever's promised for the GenCo discount, who's going to pay it? Somebody's got to pay it at some point in time, but you gave the promise, you are in no position to fulfill it. You are in no position to pay for it. You have burdened the future generations as well. We need to think very clearly on each one of them. I'm not saying give this, I'm not saying give that. But do you have the fiscal strength to handle the free offers that you're giving? And have you made enough budgetary provision for it so that those who have to supply are in a position to continue doing it?
Thank you, ma'am. It had been a very expounding exposition of the economy, the way post-pandemic, the way economy has taken up the growth path, the way we have met the challenge. Everybody was highly appreciative of the way under your leadership and the Prime Minister's vision the economy has moved. I'll just put out the names of some of the persons who have put these questions and I have summarized. Shri Siddharaman Patil, Achyuta Joyce, Keshav Prasad ji, S.K. Murthy ji, Kumar Swami Nayak, Madan Kumar ji, Professor M.G. Chandrakanta ji, Abhilash ji, Mahendra Kumar ji, Ashwin Acharya, Srinivas Sharma ji, and some other people. Some suggestions also have come. We will send from the economic cell to you for consideration. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful exposition. I would request to give a big applause to her.